on my own. Gregory's not around, and in fact, I'm not even in the studio. I'm actually from my home in South London. So hope you can tune in. You can tune in not on the Bless Radio website, as I mentioned, that is being upgraded. You can tune in on tunein.com and search for Bless FM, and you can also listen on youtube.com and search for Bless Radio 1 live stream. So hope you can hear me, listeners. It's great to join you again. The weather here in London, it's overcast, and there's going to be heavy rain apparently overnight. We've had some rain today, but it's not so bad at the moment. It's just stopped raining now. So, dear listeners, the aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message. And unfortunately tonight I won't be able to ask you to join in with your questions or comments because I'm not in the studio to take your questions and comments there. So don't try to do that. You can hopefully enjoy what I'm going to share with you. The topic for tonight, we haven't picked a specific topic. We've just called it Introduction to the Grail Message. So it's the introduction to the Grail message, where I will do my best to share with you what the Grail message is and give you some insights and knowledge from it. In fact, I'm going to read you out my introductory text that I always do at the beginning of each show. So here it is. What is the Grail message? The Grail message in the light of truth by Abdushin is a spiritual knowledge of life. It offers an explanation of the world, a picture of creation on the basis of natural laws. Its lectures contain valuable basic elements as a help in life, for through the knowledge mediated, the reader is again brought closer to life and led back to God. The Grail message deals with important fundamental questions of life by explaining in a clear and logical way the automatic working of the laws of nature, whole weaving of creation, allowing every process to be recognized and thereby the purpose of our whole life. It is directed at the individual and speaks to the innate experiences of the human being, their strengths and weaknesses. Thus, every reader has the opportunity to discover through the intuitive perception if what is stated is the truth. Combining with matter-of-fact reasoning, a complete world picture arises, where there is no separation between the visible world and the great world beyond the five senses, nor any separation between scientific and religious striving for knowledge. I'd like to give you a couple of quotes from the author of the Grail message, Abdushin. The hearer and reader of my lectures should always work within himself, keenly probing and building bridges from one lecture to the other, as well as out into the great and small world happenings. Only then will he be able to understand the Grail message and find that it gradually shapes itself into one complete whole, without leaving any gaps. Again and again, in all the happenings, the reader will come back to the basic features. He can explain everything without having to change even one single sentence. The word of the Grail message lives, so that it permits only those people who really carry the honest desire in their souls to find abundantly. All else is automatically rejected by it. For the arrogant and those who seek superficially, the message will remain the book with 7 seals. And I'd like to give you one more quote from the author. I wish to fill the gaps which have so far always remained unanswered in the souls of men, and which never leave any serious thinker in peace, if he earnestly seeks for the truth. So, dear listeners, this is Saad here, this on Bless Radio. I'm broadcasting from home tonight, not able to be in the studio. And the topic for tonight, the discussion we're going to have, or the talk I'm going to give, in fact, is an introduction to the Grail message in the Light of Truth by Abrushin. I've given you a brief, you could say, few words about it, but I want to explore it with you deeper. What actually the Grail message explains and what it gives. So, the first questions I would say for us human beings is, who are we? What actually are we? Because you see the body, you see that we have live on Earth and have activities on the Earth. In terms of, obviously, we are born, we go to school, get a job, or start a business or something that way, and then have a family, kids, another education, some other education. Some people go further into education, other people develop different skills and so on. And then there's death at the end, and that appears to be what we experience on a day-to-day basis. But is that it, or is there actually more? I mean, we always have questions in our life. Why is this way? What is the meaning of life? Things like that. Something beyond let's say, just the ordinary daily activities of feeding ourselves, earning money, or even just social activities, community activities, being with friends and so on. Is there all there is in this earth life, or is there more beyond the earth life even? So all these questions, I will say most of us have some inkling or some thoughts about them, but do we really want to go deeper to explore, find the answers, or just live as, our mundane lives? Well, this program is called the Spiritual Discussion Program. So the idea is to go deeper and explore these things. So let us start with who we are. What are we? As I mentioned, we know that we are this body, live in this body. And some people think, oh, the thing that is alive, that is moving us or making decisions and so on, is the brain. And then that would mean that when we die, that's the end of our life. And that's the end. That's the end of our story. However, there's something always in the back of our, you could say, minds, saying we're not sure. Maybe there is more. There's something we need to discover. Well, if I were to say that there's a gift that everybody has been given, and it's called the intuition. Every human being has it. And not once in a while, it does show itself. Especially, you can have what we call gut feeling about something. And then, it could be a warning, something coming from within. And we don't know where it's coming from and why. What is the warning exactly behind it? What's behind it? However, it's there. And we know it's not a fiction because you just have a strong feeling in it. And it's just not something, something just happened to us. So that is called the intuition, like I mentioned. And that is a voice of our spirit. Now, mentioning the word spirit first time in this context, and so I'd like you to consider that actually the human being is actually a spirit, a personality, which lives on this earth in the human body. So actually the one that moves this body or drives this body or whatever decisions we make is actually this, and not our brain, or at least the physical brain. Because as I said, that's all of this body, including the brain, all dies at the physical death. And otherwise, our life, what is the point of this life? It's simply to just grow to an adult, produce children, make money to live, and so on, and enjoy life, maybe traveling, and other things, doing what you like doing. Is that all there is, or is there more? Well, if you consider the spirit, like I said, it deals with things in a much deeper level. Your emotions and things, those things are much, they're basically, in a way, hidden from us. We don't even know who we really are. And yet, if we allow the spirit or the intuition to work, we can receive answers, we can understand life, and even make sense of life deeper than just the physical activities that we are used to. So I'm going to actually tell you more what the Grail message tells us about it, and then we can try to understand if that makes sense or not, because everything I say, it needs to be tested, not just believed or just because I'm saying something. Everything must be understood, questioned and tested till it makes sense for you. If it doesn't make sense, I would say you should reject it or explore further before you reject it, because in the end it has to be logical and not otherwise it's called blind faith, and not something you're just taking on something and be not sure of what it is true or not true. And yet other things we do on the earth, we know we're going to our home or we're meeting a friend, all those things are very clear and straightforward, and we don't have to imagine things there. So same with the spiritual knowledge and spiritual life. It should not be a mystery to us. It should actually be real, just like the earth life and other things that we do. The only thing is, if it's going to understand spiritual life, you have to use something spiritual, because spiritual is not material and not earthly. So earthly means cannot understand spiritual things. And you could say the same with the spiritual things. Spiritual ability is not exclusively for although we use the spiritual ability on the earth, it is not directly for the earth. It's just a tool and the earthly is just a part of our life, earthly part of our existence. So let me just start with, as human beings, we know about the physical birth, how we came onto the earth from that point of view. But what about, did we exist before that? And when we die, is there something where we go to after death? So if I were to say to you, we human beings are actually each human being is an individual spirit now, and we existed before we were born on this earth. So if we look at that, where did that spirit come from? Well, as many people have heard, so above as below, or as it is in heaven, so it will be on the earth. So if we can imagine that the spirit exists in heaven, and it has journeyed down to this earth. So for it to get to the earth, it had to travel all the realms from the spiritual world, let's say that is the origin of us human beings, and travel all the way to this earth. So how did that happen? I need to give a bit more background if I were to explain that. So as I mentioned, that we human beings are actually spiritual beings, our spirit, and our journey actually starts in the spirit world or spiritual world. Let's call it paradise. That is, it's said in many teachings, they call it paradise, in heaven. And in our case, we started as an unconscious spirit germ. or spirit seed. And so the aim for us as being unconscious is to become conscious. It's just a natural thing for us for it to happen. However, the activity in the spiritual world is very fast, and we are not able to handle that speed of activity in that spiritual world. So we had to travel onto this earth where the activity is slower, and then we can develop ourselves and become more mature and become full adults, you could say, full spiritual beings, mature spiritual beings. Now, as I mentioned, there's the journey from spiritual world to the earth. It passes through certain planes before it comes to this earth. So just to give it in a very brief way, after the spiritual world, where we come from, is this animistic world. That's actually where the animal souls originate. So you can see from what I'm saying, the human beings and animals are of different origin. And then from this and traveling through the animistic world, we actually have to wear the coat, you could say, or the body of the animistic world to be actually passed through it. So we now take on a coat. Our original core is just the spirit, but when we pass through the animistic world, we wear the coat of the animistic world, and then continue into the ethereal world, which is the next world below. That one is not a world where you could say any souls or spirit beings exist. It's just a layer through which you have to pass through before we can come into this world of matter, the physical world. So I don't want to call it another type of matter or physical or gross, but it's a fine matter, if I were to call it fine matter. And then we come to this more gross matter, the physical world that we live in. And I know it sounds very simplistic when I explain it this way, but this will all make sense when you get the details of this journey. So I have to start with broad outlines before I build a complete picture. And as I say, all this is a process. It's not a magic that a human spirit, let's say God created man, and God said this and that happened. Yes, God did create man, or God declared something, but all of that was a process. So, and that was not any magic involved in it. It was a process of radiation. So let's say when God said, "Let there be light," he sent out light out of himself, and then it became, as you can imagine, outside God. Let's say there was nothing outside of God, just to keep it simple. And as the light came out, it cooled down further and further away from God. It went out, it cooled, and each time it cooled, beings were formed. And at one point, the spiritual world formed. And so we were, and by the way, in the spiritual world, it's not only the human spirits exist there are other spiritual beings. So we are not the only spiritual beings. So, and we are in the world of spiritual, we are on the lowest level, lowest part of the spiritual plane. There are spiritual beings who are born immediately conscious. They don't need to come onto this earth to become conscious. But at the lower plane of the spiritual world is where we originate, and that's why we are called spirit germs when we started our life. And then we pass through, like I mentioned, the next plane, which is animistic world, where the animal souls originate, and we passed through that world, and we took on a coat of that world. And then the next world, as I mentioned, was ethereal. Just I will call it the non-physical or the beyond, a finer matter than the gross matter that we see on this earth. And then finally, we entered this gross matter, the physical world. And each of these worlds we traveled through, we took on the coat of each world. So finally we have this body. Now that sounds like we just came as human beings from the spiritual world directly. It was not. That's not a complete story, and it's not exactly true, correct. But that does not give you the full proper picture. In fact, many people wonder about whether there's been evolution, and or some religions or religious people think no, God made the sea, the land, and then animals, and then eventually the human being. And it's like it happened, each one after the other, but there was no evolution involved. And yet scientists with their research find that there has been evolution. So there seems to be apparently a conflict there. But in reality, both have only got part of the picture. Scientists are only looking at the material aspect of this development, while this religious, let's say, teachings, or people who follow the religions have only part of the picture as well, and not that complete story. So they're able to say, they think that there cannot be any evolution. It's just God planted these different species onto the earth. Actually, there has been an evolution. Apologies for that noise. Yes, there has been an evolution, but not the way scientists think. So I will explain that a bit more. Although in the Grail message it deals with this, it's really such a detailed process. It will be hard to actually summarize it in any way. But the way we should look at it is, you are your own species, and you do not change your species. So if you're a spiritual being, you always are a spiritual being. You can't become an animal or animistic being or soul. I have to clarify these concepts, but basically man is man and animal is animal, and a man cannot turn into an animal, neither can an animal turn into a man, because of their different species. However, on the earth, the body that we wear as a human being has evolved from the animal body, or let's say the ape-like body. So yes, at one point in our evolution, in the evolution of the body, when the animals, certain animals had developed their highest level, that body was taken over by a human being, a spirit, and then evolved further to the human body that we know now. So again, it seems a little bit jumping here, and I want to try and clarify so that I don't confuse people. So let me just build a little bit more information into what I'm saying. As I mentioned, we are a spirit living in this physical body. That's what it is. That's what we see if you look at it in overall picture. But I told you that our origin is from the spiritual world, and so somehow from the spiritual world we have traveled to this earth, and that has taken millions and billions of years, you could say. Before the earth was there, this journey would have started. However, we know that before the man came on this earth, there were animals, there were plants, there was the sea and land. And they said the early species of life on this earth were the smaller, you could say, animals and so on. So there was an evolution in the sense of the bodies of each of these animals that we have, that exist today, the animals that exist today. And in the process in the story of the human being, what has happened basically is the most highly developed animal at one point was this ape-like creature in part of the evolution, and as I say, animals, the core of the animal is a soul, which originates from the animistic world. So what happened at one point, when the most highly developed animal had reached its peak, in its child, you could say, instead of being born a soul in it, an animal soul in it, it was a human spirit that was born in this, let's say, the baby of this ape-like creature, and that became the first human being. So now you can see, when we have the story in the Bible, let's say, of Adam and Eve, which many people take it literally, that this is the first man and woman, Adam and Eve. That actually literally is not correct, because if there was evolution, many animals evolved. Let's say at one point this ape-like creature that existed on this earth, which had reached its highest peak, when it had its child, it happened that inside was the soul, not a soul of animal anymore, it was a human spirit. And this process was not only one place on the earth, it happened in a few places. So otherwise we would really have, as it says in the Bible, it appears that we are all human beings originated from one man and one woman. But in reality, it's not that at all like that. It is how the process happened in many places through this evolutionary process. Like I say, you cannot change your species. If you're spiritual, you're spiritual, and if you're animistic, you're animistic. The only thing, what is happening in evolution, is that the evolving of the evolution of the body. As you know, apes or ape-like creatures, they cannot do what a human being can do. A human being can build a home. Let's say that they lived in caves at one point, then they make huts and so on, and now we have houses. And we can cook, we can do many things what an animal cannot do. An animal soul can never ever achieve what a human spirit can achieve, simply because the species of a human being is actually higher than the soul of an animal. They have different abilities and capabilities. Anyway, I don't want to dwell too much on that, because it won't help at this point to have all this information. I'd rather now move on to the abilities of a human being, and and what is the life of a human being, what's the purpose of a human being. So I've mentioned about the human spirit, that I've showed you that it existed before that we were born, before the earth existed. And so when we die, it'll be no surprise to you to hear this, that it is the spirit that continues to live, and the body, yes, goes into the earth and it decays. So what exists? So that's what is life after death. The death is of what? Death is not of the human being, the death is of the body. So there's the birth of a human being in a body, and the death of a human being, death of the body. But the human spirit that lives in the body continues to exist after death. So as I said, so really what is the real true life is only spiritual for the human being. That's the only real living being. So in a sense, when people, you could say, mourn the death of someone, because they feel sad that they're going to, obviously they think they're going to miss him, and he's actually dead. They think that there's just no more life after that. But actually it's not at all that way. Or let's say even many people who believe in some life after death in their religion or belief, they still mourn, even though they say they believe in life after death. But actually mourning almost as if that's the end of that person. But actually that is never the case, because as I told you, the true life is only spirit, and that is what exists after death. And that's what continues to exist. So there's no fear, there should be no fear of death. In fact, it should be a celebration of birth into the beyond, into the life in the beyond. And the aim of every human being is to return to its spiritual home, this as a conscious spirit. And of course, that's what we are really meant to do, if we are aware of it. In fact, it is implanted in us to find, the origin is spiritual, and so it must return to the spiritual through our nature that we have implanted in us, that we could find our home, our true, real home. As I mentioned, we started our journey as an unconscious spirit being, and so by experiencing life in a conscious way, learning from what's around on the earth, in nature, we can only grow. And as we grow, we will get answers also to these questions that we have in life. Now, what I want to do now is read something from the Grail message to give you a picture as well from there. Dear listeners, if anybody's joined us, this is the Spiritual Discussion Program. I'm Saad here, not in the studio tonight. I'm actually at home in London, South London. And Gregory's not able to join us this evening, so he'll be back next week. The discussion we're having tonight is the topic, or you could say the show is about introduction to the Grail message. We haven't got a specific topic, and I'm giving a talk really on the story of what we human beings are, how we came to this earth, and what is our purpose actually in this journey of life. So what I'm going to do, I've got and also, dear listeners, if you are interested in picking up the Grail message, you can go and have any questions, want to get some more information, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that, www.grail, Grail, message, message.com. And just to let you know, we are not broadcasting tonight on blessradio.org. The website is being upgraded. You can listen in on tunein.com and then search for Bless FM. Or you can listen on YouTube and go to search for Bless Radio 1 live stream. Bless Radio 1 live stream on YouTube. So, dear listeners, I'm going to read you one of the lectures of the Grail message. It is called Awake. I'm just going to find it. Here we go. Awake, ye men, out of your leaden slumber. Recognize the ignoble burden you bear, that weighs upon millions with enormous pressure. Throw it off. Is it worth bearing? Not for a single second. Of what does it consist? Empty husks which the breath of truth will scatter in the wind. You have wasted time and energy for nothing. Therefore burst the fetters that hold you down, and free yourselves at last. The man who remains inwardly bound will always be a slave, even if he were a king. You bind yourselves with what you aspire to learn. Reflect. In acquiring knowledge, you force yourselves into alien forms thought out by others. You willingly adopt an alien conviction, making your own only what others have experienced from within, for themselves. Consider, what applies to one does not apply to all. What helps one person may harm the other. Each individual must make his own way to perfection. The abilities he carries within him are equipment for this. He must adjust himself to them and build upon them. Otherwise he will remain a stranger to his real self, will always stand beside what he has learned, which can never come to life in him. Thus he is barred from any gain. He will vegetate, all progress being impossible. Listen, you who seriously aspire to light and to truth. Each individual must inwardly experience the way to the light, and he must discover it himself, if he wishes to be sure of the way. Only what a man experiences inwardly, what he perceives intuitively in all its variations, has he fully grasped. Both sorrow and joy are constantly rapping at the door to encourage and arouse man to awaken spiritually. He is then very often freed for a few seconds from the trivialities of everyday life, and in happiness or grief vaguely senses his affinity with the spirit pulsating through all that lives. And everything is life, nothing is dead. Happy is he who seizes and holds on to such moments of affinity, using them to soar upwards. In so doing, he must not keep to rigid forms, but everyone must develop himself from within. Ignore the scoffers who are strangers to spiritual life. They stand before the great work of creation which offers so much, like drunkards and like sick people, like blind men who grope their way through life on earth without seeing all the splendor around them. They are confused. They sleep, for how can anyone still affirm, for instance, that only what he sees exists? That where his eyes perceive nothing, there is no life? That with his physical death he himself also ceases to exist? All because in his blindness he could not, up till now, convince himself to the contrary through his eyes. Does he not already know from many things how very limited is the capacity of the eye? Does he not yet know that it is related to the capacity of his brain, which is bound to time and space? That because of this he cannot recognize with his eyes anything arising above time and space? Has this logical, intellectual reasoning not yet become clear to any of these scoffers? Spiritual life, let us also call it the beyond, is after all merely something that stands completely above the earthly division of time and space, and therefore requires a similar nature in order to be recognized. Yet our eyes do not even see all that can be classified within time and space. Think of a drop of water, which appears immaculately pure to every eye, and which on examination under the microscope is shown to contain millions of living organisms, mercilessly fighting and destroying each other. Are there not sometimes bacteria in both water and air that have the power to destroy human bodies, and that are imperceptible to the human eye? But they become visible by means of powerful instruments. Who will then still dare to maintain that there is nothing new and as yet unknown to be seen, when the power of these instruments is further increased? Increase their power 1,000-fold, 1,000,000-fold, and there will be no end to what may be seen, but ever new worlds which previously you could neither see nor feel, yet which nevertheless existed, will unfold before you. Logical thinking also leads to the same conclusions about everything the sciences have hitherto been able to collect. There is a prospect of continuous progress and development, but never an end. What then is the beyond? The word confuses many. The beyond is simply all that cannot be perceived by earthly means. And earthly means are the eyes, the brain, and all other parts of the body, also the instruments that help them to do their work still more accurately and precisely, and to extend its scope. Therefore, one could say, the beyond embraces all that is beyond the perceptive capacity of our physical eyes. But there is no division between this world and the beyond, nor any gulf. All is united, as is the whole of creation. One power streams through this world and the beyond. Everything lives and works from this one life stream, and is thus quite inseparably linked. Thus the following becomes clear. If one part of it sickens the effect must be felt in the other part, as with a physical body. Through the attraction of homogeneous species, diseased matter from this other part will then flow across to the sick part, and thus further aggravating the illness. But should such a disorder become incurable, it would be absolutely necessary forcibly to sever the ailing member if the whole is not to suffer permanently. For this reason, change your attitude. There is no such thing as this world and the beyond, but only one united existence. The idea of a division has been invented solely by man, because he is unable to see everything and the idea of a division has been invented solely by man because he is unable to see everything and imagines himself to be the center and the focal point of the surroundings visible to him. Yet his sphere of action is greater. With the erroneous idea of a division, however, he forcibly limits himself, hinders his progress, and allows his imagination to run riot and conjure up grotesque pictures. Is it surprising, then, if as a consequence many only smile incredulously, while others adopt an unwholesome form of worship that becomes servile or degenerates into fanaticism? Who can then still be astonished if some people develop a nervous fear, even terror and consternation? Away with all this. Why these torments? Break down this barrier which human error sought to erect, but which never existed. Your past attitude has also given you a false foundation on which you vainly endeavored to continually to build up the true belief, that is inner conviction. You consequently encounter points, obstacles which must make you waver and doubt, or compel you to tear down the whole structure, perhaps abandoning everything out of despair or resentment. The loss is then yours alone, because this is not progress for you, but standstill or retrogression. The road which in any case you must follow one day will only be lengthened thereby. When you have at last perceived creation as a complete whole, as it is, and do not separate this world from the beyond, then you have found the direct path. The true goal draws nearer, and the ascent gives you joy and satisfaction. You are then much better able to feel and understand the reciprocal actions pulsating warmly through this uniform whole, since all activity is driven and sustained by the one power. Then the light of truth will dawn upon you. You will soon realize that many who scoff only do so out of indifference and indolence, just because it would require a certain effort to throw over existing ideas and learning and erect something new. Others would find it interferes with their customary mode of living and thus becomes uncomfortable for them. Leave all such alone. Do not argue, but offer your knowledge helpfully to those who are not satisfied with fleeting pleasures, to those who seek for something more in their earthly lives than merely to fill their stomachs like animals. Do not then bury your talent. Impart to them the recognition you are granted, for in giving your knowledge will in turn be enriched and strengthened. An eternal law operates in the universe, that only in giving can one receive, where lasting values are concerned. Like a sacred legacy of its creator, this law deeply permeates the whole of creation. To give unselfishly, to help where help is needed, to understand both the suffering and the weaknesses of your fellow men, means to receive, because it is simple and the true way to the highest. And to To will this seriously brings you immediate help and strength. By one single, honest, and ardent wish to do good, the wall which your thoughts have hitherto erected as a barrier is cleaved, as with a flaming sword, from the other side, that is now still invisible to you, for you are indeed one with the beyond, which you so fear, deny, or long for. You are closely and inextricably linked with it. Try it, for your thoughts are messengers you send forth, which return heavily laden with similar thought forms, good or evil as the case may be. This actually happens. Remember that your thoughts are realities that shape themselves spiritually, often becoming forms outliving the earth life of your body. Then much will become clear to you. Thus it is quite rightly said, for their works will pursue them. Thought creations are works which will one day await you, which form light or dark rings around you, which you must traverse in order to enter the spiritual world. Neither protection or intervention can help in this, because the decision lies with you. Therefore you yourself must take the first step in everything. This is not difficult. It lies solely in the volition, which expresses itself through thoughts. Thus you carry heaven or hell within you. You are free to decide, but you are then irreverent. You yourselves create these consequences, and that is why I exhort you. Keep the hearth of your thoughts pure. By so doing, you will bring peace and be happy. Do not forget that every thought you produce and send out attracts all similar thoughts on its way, or attaches itself to others, thus continually increasing in strength and finally also reaching a goal. The human brain, which is perhaps off its guard just for a moment, thereby offering such floating thought forms the opportunity to penetrate and operate. Just consider what responsibility will fall upon you if at some time or other the thought becomes a deed through some person whom it was able to influence. This responsibility already arises through the fact that every single thought keeps a constant link with you, just as if by an unbreakable thread, so as to return with strength gained on its way, either to burden you or to bring you joy, according to the kind you produced. Thus you stand in the world of thoughts, according to your way of thinking at the time. Make room for similar thought forms. Do not therefore waste power of thinking, but gather it for defense and for keen thinking, which goes forth like spears and affects everything. Thus create out of your thoughts the holy spear, which fights for the good, heals wounds, and furthers whole of creation. Adjust your thinking, therefore, towards activity and progress. To do this, you must shake many a pillar supporting traditional ideas. Often it is some concept wrongly understood that hinders man from finding the right way. He must return to the starting point. One flash of light will destroy the whole structure so painfully erected over decades, and following a shorter or longer period of stunned inertia, he will make a fresh start. He must do so, for there is no standing still in the universe. Let us take, for instance, the concept of time. Time passes. Times change. We hear this said everywhere, and automatically a picture arises in the spirit. We see changing times marching past us. This picture becomes so ingrained that for many it also forms a solid foundation on which they continue to build, adjusting their whole research and speculation to it. Before long they encountered obstacles which contradict each other. However hard they try, not everything will fit in. They lose their way, leaving gaps that can no longer be filled in spite of all their pondering. Many then believe that in such places faith must act as a substitute for the failure of logical reasoning. But this is wrong. Man should not believe in things he cannot grasp. He must try to understand them, for otherwise he opens wide the door to errors, which with errors the truth is always debased. To believe without understanding is just indolence, mental laziness. It does not lead the spirit upwards, but presses it down. Look upward, therefore. We are to test and investigate. Not for nothing does the urge to do so lie within us. Time. Does it really pass? Why does one encounter obstacles when thinking more deeply about this axiom? Simply because the fundamental idea is wrong. For time stands still. We, however, hurry towards it. We rush into it. We rush into time, which is eternal, and seek the truth in it. Time stands still. It remains the same today, yesterday, and 1,000 years hence. Only the forms change. We plunge into time to cull from her records for the purpose of enriching our knowledge from what has been collected there. For time has lost nothing. It has recorded all things. It has not changed because it is eternal. You too, O man, are always just the same. Whether you appear young or old, you remain what you are. Have you not already sensed this yourself? Do you not clearly notice a difference between the form and your ego, between the body that is subject to change and yourself, the spirit, which is eternal? You seek the truth. What is truth? What you feel to be the truth today, you will recognize even tomorrow as error, in which, however, you will later again see grains of truth, for the manifestations also change their forms. Thus your seeking continues, yet amid these changes you mature. Truth, however, remains always the same. It does not change, for it is eternal. And being eternal, it can never be clearly and truly grasped by the earthly senses, which are familiar only with the change of forms. Therefore become spiritual, free from all earthly thoughts, and then you will possess the truth, will stand in the truth, and will bathe in it, constantly surrounded by its pure light, for it will envelop you completely. As soon as you become spiritual, you will swim in it. Then you no longer need to study so painstakingly what science has to offer, nor need you fear errors, but you will already have the answer to every question in the truth itself. Moreover, you will no longer have any questions. Moreover, you will no longer have any questions, because without thinking you will know all things, will embrace all things, because your spirit will live in the pure light, in the truth. Therefore become spiritually free. Burst all the fetters that hold you down. If the obstacles present themselves, welcome them joyfully, for they show you the way to freedom and strength. Look upon them as gifts from which you will benefit, and you will overcome them with ease. Either such obstacles are put in your way to teach and develop you, in which case you add to the means of your ascent, or they are a reaction to some debt which you have incurred, which you can redeem in this way and thus free yourselves. In either case, they help you to advance. Therefore set out to meet them with a bold heart, for it is for your own good. It is foolish to talk of reverses of fortunes or of trials. Every conflict and every sorrow means progress. Men are thus offered a chance to dispel the shadows of former misdeeds. Not even a single farthing can be remitted to the individual, because here also the cycle of eternal laws in the universe is inflexible. The creative Father Will reveals himself in them, and thereby forgives us and dispels all darkness. So clearly and wisely is everything arranged that the minutest swerving from this would have to plunge the world into ruins. But what of man, who has very much to redeem from former times? Must he not despair? Will he not tremble at the thought of the misdeeds he has to atone for? As soon as he honestly wills, he can hopefully and gladly begin with it, free from all worry. For a balance will be brought about the counter-current of the power of good volition, which like other thought forms takes life in the spiritual, forging a strong weapon capable of removing every dark burden, every weight, and leading the ego towards the light. Power of volition, a mighty force, unsuspected by so many, attracting similar powers like a never-failing magnet. It grows like an avalanche, uniting with similar spiritual forces. It works backwards and again reaching the starting point, thus the origin, or rather the producer, uplifting him high to the light or pressing him deeper into the mud and filth, exactly in accordance with what the author himself originally willed. He who is acquainted with this steady, never-failing reciprocal effect inherent in all creation, which manifests and unfolds itself with absolute certainty, knows how to make use of it. For he must love it and fear it. Gradually, the invisible world around him becomes alive to him, for he feels its influence so distinctly that it silences all doubt. If he only pays a little attention to it, he must intuitively sense the strong waves of ceaseless activity that affect him from out of the great universe. Finally, he feels himself the focal point of strong currents, like a lens that absorbs the rays of the sun, concentrating them on one point and producing a combustive power which can burst forth to singe and destroy, but also to heal, animate, and bring blessing, and likewise can start a blazing fire. And you too are such lenses, capable through your volition of gathering these invisible power currents that reach you and sending them forth as a united force for good or evil, to bring blessing or indeed destruction to mankind. Through this you can and should light a blazing fire in the souls of men, a fire of enthusiasm for the good, for the noble, and for perfection. This only requires a strength of volition which in certain sense can make man lord of creation and master of his own fate. It is man's own volition which brings him destruction or redemption, reward or retribution with inexorable certainty. Do not fear then that this knowledge will alienate you from the Creator or weaken your present faith. On the contrary, the knowledge of these eternal laws which you can put to use makes the entire work of creation appear even more sublime to you. Its magnitude forces him who searches more deeply to his knees in veneration. Man will then never wish for evil things. He will joyfully grasp at the best support that exists for him. Love. Love for the whole wonderful creation, and the love for his neighbor, that he too may be led to the glory of this enjoyment, of this consciousness of power. Dear listeners, this is Bless Radio. It's the spiritual discussion program. I'm Saad, and the aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abrushin. And I've just been reading you a lecture from the Grail message called Awake. It's quite a long lecture, and you might have had difficulty to follow it. So I would just recommend that you pick up the Grail message yourself, get a copy. You can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that, www.grail, Grail, message, message.com. I really request that you do that so you can examine this work for yourself and see its beauty and its the knowledge that it provides in understanding this life in a clear and logical way. Now, I started the show by talking about who we human beings are, where we come from. And in the lecture that I've just been reading, Awake, it talks about the laws of creation, eternal laws, or the natural laws. And I want to share with you what these laws are. First of all, the laws, what I'm talking about, they're eternal. They're perfect, and there's no way to circumvent them. Everything happens in life within these natural laws. So let me start with, there are three laws, or three basic laws. And the first law, in the Grail message, it declares it as, or calls it, the law of reciprocal action. And Jesus said it another way, what you sow, ye shall reap. It's exactly the same. Of course, you know about sowing a plant or a seed, and that as time takes its course, it will develop into a tree of bear fruits and harvest whatever the type of plant it is. Similarly, that applies to our deeds and our thoughts and our words. We can obviously see the results of our sowing plants and nature taking its effect on with rain and soil and sunshine and resulting in the harvest. That one we can see. But these laws, as I say, they are universal laws. They apply in all part of this world, this creation, the physical and the non-physical. What you see physically and what you see non-physically. In fact, in the lecture I read, we are told that the beyond and this physical world are actually one united existence. It's only us human beings who have separated it because we refuse to look beyond our physical eyes or our senses to accept that there is actually the beyond and that exists. But the moment you start considering it, that this is possible, or this is how it is, you will start seeing that this actually is true and that it really is working this way. So let's pick something. You know, when you're at home and you're cooking, let's say, for your family, and you're angry, your anger, it manifests. Yes, you could be, let's say, your anger, first of all, it would be picked up by people around you. Obviously, it could be your physical, shown in a physical way with your face, but the vibration, the anger has like an aura, a vibration, which can be sensed. I know people call it body language, but that's still physical. But people would pick up your anger around you. Now, if they pick it up and they're affected by it, it has an effect. Even though anger, it appears, doesn't have any form. You might think that, but actually it does have a form. You can say the anger is like you radiated anger. And or energy, it radiates like energy. And when you're cooking, let's say, cooking food for your family, and you cook with that anger, then that energy of anger transmits into the food as well. And the food, even though you maybe use the same recipe as many times before, however, it will not taste as lovely as when you have done it with love. Some of that anger energy would have entered into the food, and when somebody tastes it, it will be sensed. Of course, people may not come to that and may not be realizing that's what's going on here. But yes, you know when you're happy, how you feel. Time passes quickly. You feel good. And when you're angry, you feel frustration, there's stress, and all that comes with it. And that energy is also exists and is picked up. And you can imagine that, because you have an aura, you are radiating as a human being. So the anger also will show up like that. It actually exists. And of course, it has effects. The other way to put this law of reciprocal action that I'm talking about, uh, uh, every action has a reaction. And as it says in science, they say equal and opposite reaction. But actually, in this, in the law of nature, the reaction or the result is multiplied. So what you reap, what you sow, is multiplied, because when you plant a seed, as you know, it doesn't get one fruit, it gets many fruit. So can you imagine, with one thought, if the fruit of that one thought multiplied? I would say the way you could see it is, if you do something to help someone, it obviously gives them happiness, but that happiness then spreads. So you can say that doing one good deed it is multiplied because of the result reaches so many people. Similarly, if you do something harmful to someone, that also can affect not only the person you're targeting, but also the. Now, there's a second law, the law of attraction of homogeneous species. That is how it is described in the Grail message. We could put it in a more simplistic way, but that doesn't give the full picture. Like attracts like. Or another way, birds of a feather flock together. You can imagine these sayings that we have not just been thought out, willy-nilly. Is actually, you could say, through experiences of the human beings, these words have come out. Words of like father, like son, like mother, like daughter, so on and so on. So let's look at that. The law of attraction of homogeneous species. What does that mean? Well, if you are, let's say, if you do good, you will attract good. If you do bad, you attract bad. Another way you can look at like attracts like is smokers. They are attracted to smokers. So we said it's a law of attraction of homogeneous species or similar species. So what do we mean by species? It can be people, it can be thoughts, it can be words, it can be groups. You can imagine a similar race. If you have a similar race, you're automatically attracted to your own race. It's just a natural attraction. Nothing against any other race. Is simply that is a natural attraction of the same race. It can't be helped. And similar professions. If you're at a party and you start chatting, and before you know it, you meet somebody with a similar something in common with you, profession or hobby, you will be attracted to them. It's just a natural way how things work. Now I'll move on to the third law, the law of, I'm going to call it spiritual, or law of spiritual gravity. That's how it is again described in the Grail message. Now we know gravity from the earthly sense, but it also exists in the spiritual sense. And what do we mean by in a spiritual sense? So I'm sure you know, when you help someone, you feel light. And if you hurt someone, you feel guilty. And guess what? When you feel light, of course your physical weight has not changed, but you feel light. And if you hurt someone, let's say you feel heavy in your heart. Again, physically your weight has not changed, but somehow you sense within, the guilt is not there. Guilt is burdening you. It's burdening when you do harm someone. So that gravity is applying in the spiritual world. In spiritual gravity, meaning you do something light, you feel lighter. You do something dark or hurtful, you feel heavy. spiritually heavy. Now, I want to give an example like this. It might sound a bit weird, but I'll give this example. Imagine that you are a thief, and in the earthly laws you are never caught, right? And then you pass on. Maybe you're thinking you've escaped, but guess what? It doesn't work like that. According to your spiritual weight, you land in the world where you belong. So now you basically imagine when you die, you shed your physical body, and the natural laws take you to the place where your spiritual weight uh, lands you. Which is similar to other people with that similar, let's say, vice. That in this case we'll call it a vice. That there are also thieves there who are similar to you in that sort. I know you'd think, oh, on Earth, how can that be in the beyond? That it's not like it is on the Earth. Earth can move around and do anything you want, meet people, different people, and all that. Well, Earth is a very special place because on the Earth we wear a body which allows us to move around all over the place freely. But when we go pass on into the beyond, we don't have our physical body anymore, and the laws work more, let's say, at a higher speed than they work on this Earth, because it's finer there. And here on the Earth is a denser world. It takes time, let's say, for our ideas to manifest in the physical. Yes, you send a thought out, or you can move your arm whenever you want, but when it comes to doing other actions, it takes time. However, in the beyond, when you have when you declare something or what you want something, it happens immediately, or much quicker, at least, let's say, than is on this Earth. And that means the laws also activate quicker as well. So again, one thing I wanted to say about the laws, you can do the actions, but the reactions are brought by the nature, the natural laws. So, like I said, I'm thinking of the example of this. I gave an example of being a thief who was never caught on the Earth by the earthly laws. He passes on, and there he lands in a world according to his spiritual weight amongst other thieves. And guess what? These thieves want to steal from him, or they try and steal from him, or from you in this case. And at some point, you have to keep looking behind your back to avoid somebody stealing from you. You get tired of it. You hate that somebody is trying to do that to you, and then you yourself will see, I was doing that, and I don't want to be this type of person. And you have a change of your inner attitude, that you know that stealing was wrong, and you don't want to ever have to be this way. Once your inner attitude changes, your spiritual weight also changes. These things, this is a mechanism that I'm describing to you. It's all automatic. The laws are always automatic. You give the action, and the reaction is. And so, as I said, the reaction here is you have changed your inner attitude, and now your weight, your attitude in this way, that you now know that stealing is not right and what harm it does, and you change your inner attitude to be not that way anymore. By doing that, your spiritual weight has also changed. It has become lighter, because you're not a burden. You want to move away from this burden, so you want to go out of there. So probably you have sent out a prayer to come out of this world, and because of your inner change of attitude, the laws hear that prayer, and so your weight has changed, and they bring you up to another world. Let's say this world would most likely be is the next, you could say, sin that you carry need to be redeemed there. So you will be landing in another spiritual weight where you need to redeem something in that plane. So that's how this journey will continue. until you eventually wash away all these burdens that you've been carrying. Not everything can be probably removed in this way, but many can be. And then when you're born eventually again, yes, I haven't mentioned this before, but yes, there is something called reincarnation. We're not born on the earth once. In fact, everybody on this earth has already been born, maybe a number of times, let's say. I cannot make a complete generalization, but let's see, many of us would have been here 20 times already. But yes, it's not only about redeeming sins. The reincarnation is actually meant for development. In fact, that is what the main point of reincarnation, because you cannot learn everything in one earth life. You need to grow and develop. That is our purpose of our journey of life. From unconscious to become conscious, you need to experience life, and in one earth life you would not experience it. I mean, you could easily look at this when a child is born and he dies, or a baby is born and dies very quickly. What is life there? What experience has that child had? Virtually none. So it can't be possible that is the end of the life journey. No, you must continue to develop and grow. And whether it might take many lives, it might take a few lives, but cannot be avoided. So here I've painted a picture for you of the three natural laws working together and automatically impacting on our lives. Now, I want to share some things. Some people have sent me some questions about. So I just want to read those now, if I can find them. So this question is, who will the Grail message in the light of truth appeal to, and why? Well, the Grail message will appeal to people who are seeking answers to the questions of life. And really, to put it more appropriately, seriously seeking. Because many people are seeking answers to life, but it must be, let's say, to receive an answer, and let's say to receive the truth, one must be inwardly prepared for it. If you are not genuine in your attitude to receive this, to give up your, let's say, your beliefs, in case they happen to turn out to be wrong, then apologies for the background there. So in case you only Abrushin, who's the author of the Grail message, says in his foreword, which I will read to you, earnest seekers only. Only those who are going to examine objectively, they can receive it. So in fact, what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to read that out now. It seems very appropriate to read that out. So I shall do that. Before I even read that, this is the beginning in the front of the message. Grail message, it says, free yourself from all darkness. He who makes no effort to grasp the word of the Lord aright burdens himself with guilt. And here's the foreword of the Grail message for your guidance. The bandage falls and belief becomes conviction. Liberation and redemption lie only in conviction. I am addressing earnest seekers only. They must be able and willing to examine this matter objectively. religious fanatics and irresponsible enthusiasts may hold aloof, for they are detrimental to the truth. As for the malevolent and prejudiced, they shall find their sentence in the very words. The message will strike only those who still carry within them a spark of truth and the yearning to be true human beings. To all such it will become the shining light and staff. It will lead them unswervingly out of all the chaos of the present-day confusion. The following word does not bring a new religion, but is intended as the torch to help all serious listeners or readers find the right path, which leads them to the longed-for height. Only he who bestirs himself can advance spiritually. The fool who uses extraneous aids for this, in the form of ready-made opinions of others, only walks his path as if on crutches, while ignoring his own healthy limbs. But the moment he boldly uses all the abilities which lie dormant within him, awaiting his call to help in his ascent, he is employing the talent entrusted to him in accordance with his Creator's will, and will easily overcome all obstacles that seek to divert him. Therefore awake. Genuine faith lies only in conviction, and conviction comes solely through an inflexible weighing and examining. See that you are truly alive in the wonderful creation of your God. Abdrushin. So thank you, listener, for asking who would appeal to and why. Hello, Bless. I think I can hear you. All right. I have another question from a listener. What makes it so different from anything else on offer? So this is the Grail message. What makes it so different or special from anything that's on offer? Well, the Grail message says we must understand life consciously and not in blind faith. So many teachings, people have been following them in a blind faith, just taking it on trust. In fact, I would say people may not agree with some of what their teaching says, but because of, let's say, becoming like sheep, like follow the leader, they just follow it, not really examining what is being said, believing that if they do, let's say, question it, or they question, if they disagree with something, maybe there's a danger they might fall in danger sometime later. But then they're not walking their own journey. They're walking like a robot, believing something and following without really understanding something. That surely, that's called blind faith. That's not real. You can't be. You're not sure. You know how to get home from A to B. That's the journey on your, let's say, on the earth. But after that, like I say, life after death. Most of us, it's just a belief. If they believe it, if people believe it, most of people don't even believe it. They're not sure it is true or not true. Surely that's not something you can feel confident about when you're not sure about when you enter the beyond or when you die. It's not very good that you're not conscious about it. And here the Grail message brings that world into your consciousness that you now can see that is real. That's really the bottom line, I would say. You now get to see what reality is with your own eyes, open eyes, not with a blind faith. And it's living. It's a living faith. That's what God demands from us. That we follow Him, whatever faith you are. I'm not saying you should leave your faith, but examine everything in your faith. If it doesn't make sense, you're just only deceiving yourself by following it. You've got to examine and understand it. The Grail message answers questions, every question in life. Other teachings is not to compare with other teachings, because the truth stands by itself. We're not supposed to compare anything. Whatever you have, if it works for you, stay with it. If it doesn't work for you, look for something else until you find what you want, what works for you. So this advice or words that I speak, the answer will be different for each person. Because if you're not ready to receive something, if I give you £1 million, but you don't know how to use the £1 million, you'll waste it. And it's like a talent. You'll use and abuse the talent, which you should really know how to use. So if you're not ready, then it's not right for you. However, those who are seeking, there might be only a few, because the majority of mankind is not ready to hear these things or want to know even these things. So those who are seeking, that's what the first lecture of the Grail message is. Those who are seeking spiritual answers, this Grail message is for you. Seeking earnestly. And then another question this listener has asked: why is it so important to have it in one's life now? That's the thing. We're always saying, most of us saying, life is too busy. I've got work, I've got to take care of the family and so many other things. I have no time for spiritual things. However, in the Grail message, it makes it very clear. It has to be now, because the time is now. We have been living this on this earth. I mentioned earlier about reincarnation. Many, many times we've been born on this earth. And what have we become? Are we progressing or retrogressing? And what is the goal for our life? Is it just to earn and have children and have families and all this friendships and traveling and whatever else people want to pass their hobbies? Or is this something more? The real issue here is one day this earth and the physical universe will be destroyed naturally. Whatever we do, it can't. Nature is always going to be there. So nature is always in charge, and at one point, everything physical has a physical limit on their life, and one day it will be dissolved and destroyed. We human beings don't want to be around on this earth in that period, because surely we don't want to be, crushed in that. At the same time, we have a goal, which is to grow and develop and mature in a spiritual way. And our goal is to reach back from to our origin, to become a conscious human being, conscious human spirit. That's where we can live eternally. On this earth, it cannot be eternal. So the sooner we can get there, the better for us. By the way, just when let's say we reach into that paradise, into this spiritual world, that doesn't mean the end of our work and living. We will be doing work there to continue the progress of creation. I won't go into more about that now. But really, the thing is, we really need to know how to live on this earth in a harmonious way with all the other creatures, with fellow human beings, and to find out what to progress in this creation. Now we have a very big role to play actually. One role, we are the highest being or creature on this earth, so we have some work to do on this earth. And what is meant to happen is we are meant to transform the earth into a paradise like our home up in heaven. That's why it's called paradise. So we are meant to build a paradise on this earth, okay, which would be using our talents of, some people will be obviously gardeners, some people will be builders, some people will be musicians or artists. Everybody's got a different role to play according to their abilities and skills. So that is what I would say. The way it has to be done is to do it within in obedience and in accordance with the laws of creation. So this knowledge brings that knowledge of the laws of creation, which has never really been given in this detailed way before. So the Grail message allows you to see that and understand that it is the knowledge for today, without doubt. Because the teachings that we've had up to now, I'm not saying they're invalid at all, actually. They're valid. The only thing is we need it by modern language. It needs to be understood for the modern life. And maybe those teachings are not easily understandable today, or not enough sufficient for us to live in the current world of today. We are supposed to have a deeper understanding of life. Otherwise, still living in the, you could say, in the times of the old, where people understood in a more simplistic way, and now we need more information or more detailed information, and that is what the Grail message provides to help our understanding. Now, let's see. I've got maybe some more questions. I'm just going to check them. Okay. What caused sin into the world? Somebody's asked that question. Well, I was listening to the earlier show, and they were talking about, partly they talked about good and evil. Well, let's say God himself, or the Creator, Almighty, His light, His purity, His goodness, His love and justice, and His perfection. And human beings, it is said, are created by the Creator. So how come someone who is perfection, good, love and justice, can produce something that can do good and evil? Well, let me say this. Everything has to be natural. God himself is natural. Everything he created is natural. With the human being, which is different from other beings, animals and so on, he gave man the ability called free will. This free will is only meant to follow God's will, as I say, and that means to be constructive and to do good, basically. Now, when man separated himself from God, let's say through the Bible story talks about the temptation through Lucifer to the devil, you could say, which is the story of this apple. I know it's a pictorial story because obviously eating an apple cannot turn you into evil. I'm sure everybody knows our tree of knowledge. Why should that happen? It's a pictorial thing. So what actually that story is telling is that I know I'm giving a long answer, but in a way we need the whole context of the this happening, what actually happened to man, to get the understanding of how this evil has come into being. Basically, there's a way that God made this world, made this creation, and we are meant to work and align ourselves in the way it works. With our free will, we can choose to follow it the way God wills it, or we can say no, we can do something different. Each decision we make or action we take has a consequence. The consequence I mentioned before are brought about by the laws and automatically, but we can only do the action. The reaction is brought about by the laws. So it's really the choices we make leads to the results that we produce. So basically, I mentioned earlier, there's a law of attraction of homogeneous species. If you do good, you get good back. If you do bad, you get bad back. The bad, what is bad or evil? It's simply disobeying the laws of God, the natural ways. That's what leads to evil. In this story of the Adam and Eve eating the apple, or eating the fruit from the tree of knowledge, what it gives a, let's say, a picture which is subtle in a way that most of us would not realize. Well, that subtle picture is this: simply that we are a spiritual being, and we're meant to use our spiritual voice, the intuition. And also we have a physical brain, intellectual brain. There's an intellect involved, which works in matter only. If we become materially minded, too much materially minded, we cut off the intuition, the voice of the spirit, and work with what we want, because in the end we do what we want. What we want is to gather earthly things. But unfortunately, if that is too excessively away from what we are meant to be, then it leads to us committing evil. And what do I mean by evil here? Well, look at an animal. He only eats what he needs. He doesn't try to accumulate like we do, more money, or whatever greed you can imagine that man has manifested on this earth. That is all the evil that has come from where we have wanted something more than what we need. Or not even, let's say we've done something even destructive because of our greed to want something for ourselves and neglecting the consequences of the suffering on other fellow human beings or other creatures, simply because we have stubbornly, with our selfish view, decided we want something and ignoring the consequences on others. We all have an intuition, we all have our conscience. Any action we take, that intuition awakens within us that watch out, this is not a good idea. If you ignore this intuition, in other words, you let your intellect run, take its, let's say, be the ruler, then only disaster will happen. So we have been given the intuition, we've been given the conscience, and we must take that as the number one driver in our decision making, not the intellect, which is at the end of the day only deals with matter. It can't look beyond matter. It's not capable. Being material is not able to consider things beyond the matter. And yet this world is not about matter on its own. There is also the spiritual life, which must all be included in our consideration. And spiritual considerations are done with the intuition, not with this material intellectual brain. And that's basically the main, that's the story of, or explanation of how things have gone wrong with man. When I say man, of course I include woman in the same thing. So that's it. That is the basic story of how man has gone astray by, you could say, losing his balance between the spiritual and the material life. We do need to eat. We do need a home. Obviously, we are, let's say, having reproduction for the next generation to come on this earth. All that is fine. It's not against the natural laws. It's all natural. But everything must be in balance. When it's not in balance, something will overdevelop, and that overdevelop at the expense of something which is being then suppressed. And surely you can already hear from the word suppress, that's not a good thing. So our whole idea is to become spiritually conscious. about everything that we do, everything we think, and so on. Really, the motto from the Grail message is, it says, keep the hearth of your thoughts pure. So every action, every thought you have must come from purity, goodness. It must only come from that, because that can only produce, let's say, beautiful results. Anything else will only lead us astray or result in harm. Let me see what other questions somebody has asked. Of course, I know in some teachings it is mentioned about the judgment, or last judgment, and so I want to talk about that. All these things that, let's say, religious teachings give us, some prophecies or concepts that they give us, it must be understood that this is all natural occurrences or natural happenings, not something God has made, instituted something specifically that this is going to happen just for at this moment. So what the point I'm trying to make here is, there is an end time. There is a time when, call it the final judgment, when it's going to happen. But we are being judged all the time, actually. From the day we've been here, or before even being here, there's always been a judgment. Judgment is from the laws. What you sow, you shall reap. It happens on a daily basis. It happens over 100 years, 1,000 years. It's always happening. Only, you could say, so that is a judgment in a way. Every action has a reaction. That is partly a judgment. But then here, when it's talked in a religious context, it's taken as like the final judgment or the last judgment, meaning that, or the day of judgment, as and in some teachings is referred to like that. So yes, there is, unfortunately to say, an allotted time that we can have to have our life on this earth. I mentioned before about that everything material has to collapse one day, simply because matter can't exist forever. It has a birth and it has a death. So there's a time on this, and we, the human beings, we have come here to learn and grow and to mature. And you can imagine, when you go to school, you do your first, let's say, first classroom primary school, then you move into the secondary school, and you do exams there. And if you don't pass the exams, yes, you can review it maybe once 1 year, but by the time, and then you have to continue, you cannot allowed to continue until you pass. However, this cannot continue forever. Yes, I mentioned about reincarnation. It sounds like we can keep on coming back to this earth each time we've, either we have sinned or we just not haven't developed as we're meant to. But unfortunately, there is a actual time limit that we cannot keep reincarnating forever. Now, how can that be? How is that? Well, you look at nature. We don't expect a seed then which grows into a plant or a tree and bears fruit. At the end of the day, all of those material things, although you could call it living in a way as well, but they have a finite limit of life on the earth. So every human being, yes, he will die. We know that he dies. Yes, you can reincarnate, which means you can continue future lives. And the thing is, there's only a certain allotted time where you can develop, because if you cannot pass to that mature level that is required to live, when the time comes for the mature conscious human being to exist, you cannot be able to work. You will not be able to be active properly there. So that would not you will be only causing trouble. And so that basically, naturally, the laws will make sure when that time comes, when only the mature can exist on this earth, because what's happening also, I haven't mentioned this before, is that there's a light pressure that is continuously increasing. That's why the activity on this earth keeps becoming quicker and quicker and quicker. You find children are much more mature nowadays than maybe 100 years ago and 100 years before that. They're much more perceptive and so on. So the people who are being born on this earth now, yes, I know everybody's had many lives, but they're only the mature type of human being that is coming. I say that as if it's not 100% the whole story. So I have to be careful, because you had good and evil human beings all the time being born, and so you can have mature in a way. The let's say some evil human being can still be, in quotes, mature, but with this increasing light pressure, the more you do harmful things, the result hits you now quicker, and so only people who are striving for good things can be allowed to stay on this earth. And this is not totally answering the question, because why I'm saying this is there's two things going to happen. One is that there is going to be a millennium where only the people who pass this judgment, which means people who have been purified, who are only for the good and who only want to do good, they can be allowed to exist on this earth. And those who do not wish to turn that way, they will be, let's say, excluded. It's excluded in this way. Through the natural laws, they will be sent to regions, let's say dark regions, where they will mature with the other human beings similar to them. While those who need to mature on this earth and grow them on earth, they will gather together on the earth. But only the good ones can be allowed to stay, because for them, that's the only way the world can progress. Those who do not want to cooperate with the laws of nature, they will be taken away by the laws of nature to where they really belong, which is, you could say, the darker regions where they need to grow, where they can grow better, can mature better. I mean, why we have this mixture of variety of human beings on this earth is because we have the free will of man, and with the free will of man, the mother or mother to be attracts the soul who is similar to her. That's how it works. The laws of nature are attracted. So because we have a mixture of human beings on this earth, they attract the like one like them. But at the end of the day, the laws of nature are in charge. And so when the pressure increases from the God on this earth, the action and reaction becomes quicker and quicker and quicker. The evil will be sent. Those who are evildoers, you can say, they'll get the consequences, which is in quotes hell, if I use that word, in the world where they belong to. They should really be getting that consequence, which is in the beyond. And those who are striving for good and to really grow and do something for this goodness for this earth, they would continue to be existing on this earth, as I say. Maybe I'm not as clear as I'd like to be, but I'd like to say the light will win in the end, because it will just burn the darkness out. The darkness has to manifest itself, and in the end, you could say the evil will try to do more evil and more evil, and in the end, it will die simply because it doesn't have the strength to continue, while the light has the power and the strength, and the darkness cannot continue because it doesn't produce any light itself. It can't continue with this. It doesn't have life by itself. It only weakens and destroys things within. It's going to self-destruct. Maybe that's the best way to put it. It self-destructs while the light upbuilds, and so more things get stronger through the light, and the darkness only can, in the end, eat itself, hurt itself, and destroy itself. As I say, on the earth at the moment, you would say the majority, although it might not appear to be this way, is the darkness is in, let's say, is the dominant one on this earth. But this will change as the light pressure keeps increasing and increasing. Actually, it's coming to the end of the show now. It's almost 8 o'clock. So thank you, listeners, for joining me, Saad, tonight. Sorry, Gregory couldn't be with us tonight, and the show was a bit different than usual, not the question and answer that we normally have. So hope you will join us next Tuesday. And again, we'll have a new topic. I do encourage you all to go to read the Grail message, or pick up a copy of the Grail message to examine it and weigh it. And you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com, and get a copy from there, or you can get more information there. So I look forward to you joining us again next Tuesday. All the best. God bless.